Welcome, everyone, to a special bonus episode of Runners Roundtable, where I am joined once again with Robyn Godfrey. Joined once again. Yeah, Robyn Godfrey, you're here again. You were with me in season 5, where we explored strength training and running and aging, and such a great conversation. And in that episode, you had talked about an upcoming book. And now your book is out in the world. And here I've got my copy of it, Running the World. So today we are going to talk about the book, talk about the stories, the lessons, the adventures, the heartbreak within these pages. But before we dive deep into the book, can you just remind us again of who you are and what your relationship is to running right now?
Well, thank you for having me back. It's so wonderful to be back on your show. My name is Robyn Godfrey. I live in Wilmington, North Carolina, and I started running later in life at around the age of 47 and ran my first marathon when I was 50 and decided to pursue the World Marathon Majors. And during that time, faced a lot of challenges. My husband was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. We had a major hurricane go through our area. We, of course, had the pandemic. We had wildfires when I was doing a virtual run out west, and we even had an earthquake in Tokyo when I was there for the marathon. So it was a lot of crazy adventures and some really big highs and some really low lows. And I'm excited about the book coming out. I hope people can find some message in there, some inspiration in there for their own running, maybe a little bit of commiseration also. But also, if you're running marathons, especially the world majors, it's definitely a book for you. But even if you're not a runner, or maybe you aren't really doing marathons, I think there's still a great inspiring message in there to never feel like you're too old to go after what your dreams are and your goals, and that you always have the ability to do things if you're willing to put your mind to it and be consistent.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things I appreciated about reading the book was the messaging of timelines and how
Hmm.
there isn't a specific timeline and we don't have to have timeline for anything. Obviously, you set a goal for yourself that you wanted to have them all done by the time you turned 60, right? So like that's kind of a timeline, but even then it was one of those things of there is no right or wrong time to start. It's
Right.
more like the goal is just to keep going. So, how, and you talk about it briefly in the book, but can you just tell us what are the marathon majors and what makes that series of races so special?
Well, the World Marathon Majors consist of 6 races, and those are Boston, Berlin, Chicago, London, New York, uh, Tokyo, and did I say them all?
I
London.
I was just I'm
Six.
like listening to what you're saying that I didn't even so it's
Uh,
Boston, New
Berlin.
York, Chicago, Berlin, London, and Tokyo.
Yes, thank you. So it's a series of races, and these are called the World Marathon Majors. And these races are huge, right? They draw tens of thousands of people, and they're not easy to get into. They require either raising money, qualifying, or being lucky in a lottery. They're very challenging to get into, but I think what's so special about them is just the global running community coming together in these amazing, iconic cities around the world, and just experiencing running as a group. And it doesn't matter where you're from, what your background is. It's just a bunch of people coming together to enjoy running. And many of the elite athletes have also done the world majors, which makes it fun. A lot of world records in those races. But it's also set up by Abbott Laboratories to be that anybody can run these races. You don't have to be an elite, you don't have to be fast. You can set up a portal on their website, and as you complete the races, you put in your times, and they keep track of how many races you've done. And when you're on your last one, then a kind of a signal goes to them that you're running your 6th race, and you're going to get your 6-star medal at that race. And it's just really well organized and a very motivating group of people that are working toward this same goal. And I think that's what makes it unique is that it's not based on speed or any other factors other than opening a portal on their website and getting started. That's not to say it's easy to do. I think it's a challenge for all types of runners, whether you're fast or whether you're middle or back of the pack. It's not easy. It takes time and money and effort to do these races.
Yeah, so I like tried to keep track of it. So just so everyone knows, I'm giving you all a preview to the book, right? Your first major was London, and you did
Yes.
that one 2016 through Marathon Tours. Second major was Chicago in 2017 through charity. The
Hmm.
third major was Berlin in 2018, and that one you got in through the lottery.
I did.
Um,
Yeah.
Fourth marathon major, and this is the official one, not the unofficial virtual one you did, but fourth marathon major was October 2021 Boston Marathon, where that one you ended up raising $12,500 for. Fifth marathon major was NYC in 2022, again through charity. And then the sixth marathon major, which is the most recent one, was 2024 Tokyo. And you got in through the One Run program, which is absolutely incredible. I've never met anyone who's actually got into that up until you. So it's pretty cool. So this shows us not only did you complete them like very close together, which I think that's a feat in and of itself, especially once you take into consideration the charity component to it
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
even just the time of year where some of these races take place. I mean, half of them are fall marathons, which for us in North America means we are training through summer months, which is not fun. But it's the marathon tours, it's the lottery, it's charity, and then some of the races have their own special lotteries. And
Mhm.
Abbott even has lotteries on
Yeah.
top of lotteries for the races. So there's definitely multiple avenues for getting into the race, but it's not, I would say it's not always the most accessible just because of the amount of people that are wanting to participate, right? Like this year
Yes.
alone, for those who don't know, there were over 1 million applicants for the London Marathon for
Hmm.
2026 London. So as running increases in popularity and as the interest in marathoning increases, so does the amount of people who are entering these lotteries. So I want to ask now that you've completed these races, for people who are looking to do the marathon majors, how should they approach getting into the races?
Yeah, I think you need to be creative and you need to be patient. Now, when I ran London Marathon Tours did kind of a unique lottery that they haven't, I don't think, done since then. Um, but I think getting in through charity for London is a little more accessible. And many people are afraid to run for charity or they don't want to raise money or they're worried they're not going to be able to raise the amount. And granted, running for charity is challenging. You have to go out and ask your friends and family and colleagues for money, and that can be hard for some people. I came from a sales background, so it wasn't as hard for me to ask for money as it might be for others that are maybe not in that sort of role in their careers or have never had to do that before. But I think if you share your journey and share what you're doing and believe in the cause that you're running for, it's a whole lot easier. And some of these races, the charity amounts are not very high. So, for instance, Chicago, I ran for the same charity in Chicago and New York, and it was called Homes for Our Troops. And they build adaptive housing for post 9/11 severely disabled vets. And I really believe in that cause. It was really important to me, close to my heart. And so it was fairly easy to raise the money. And also, it wasn't a big amount. I think it was around $3,000. So it wasn't something that was completely out of the realm of possibility. So I think if you're going to go that route, which is probably going to be the easiest way to get into a lot of these, is make sure it's something you believe in, that you can get behind, that you think will resonate with the people in your network to help raise money. And there's a lot of creative ways. If you feel like, well, I can't qualify for Boston, I'm not fast enough or whatever, it's a lot bigger amounts for charity runners in Boston. I think upwards now of ten to $12,000. And you think you have to get creative. I Googled a lot before I did Boston, and I got restaurants to contribute a portion of food sales. I worked to get volunteers for races and had race directors pay for those volunteers and just tried to get really creative. I collected shoes. I did a lot of different things. And I mean, it's hard work. It's not something that's going to just come easy and money is going to flow in. You have to work at it. But if you believe in what you're doing and you know your why, it's so much easier than if you are kind of floundering around, not really sure what your charity really means to the world. So I would suggest, now there's so many more tools like ChatGPT and those kind of things you can ask, how do I raise, this money to run this marathon? What kind of messages should I send out? You could really come up with some creative messaging around how to raise the money and get, into these races. But I would also keep trying the lotteries because you never know.
Mm-hmm.
I got into the Tokyo Run as One lottery, and that lottery happens every month. And you have to run a half marathon, and I think they charge like $15 to register. And really, the hardest part is figuring out how to load it into their system to get it in there right. But you don't have to run it. You can walk it. You can do it over several days. There's no time requirement. And I got in my very first try doing that. So you never know. You might get lucky and get in a lottery and be able to run it without having to raise money or qualify. And for those runners that are faster, some of the qualifying times are really challenging. I think New York and Chicago are really, really fast, like way faster than Boston. So if you are a fast runner, take a look at those qualifying times. You might be really close to being able to qualify, and that opens up, a whole nother avenue for you. I think for races like London and Tokyo, the qualifying times may only be for elite athletes. I can't remember. I know for
I
Tokyo, I
think
think it's only for.
I would say London, it's the good for age, and it's only for people who are residents or like
Oh,
citizens.
okay.
Yeah, it's not
Yeah.
open to, it's like, you can't run a fast time here in the States and use that
Yeah.
over there. You have to be a British citizen, I guess, to be able to use
I
that.
think in Tokyo they only allow elite runners, so
Mhm.
there really isn't like a time qualifier. But they change all the time these races, and then Abbott has their own kind of what I call like a mini lottery, where if you have three or more races under your belt, they're starting to have lotteries now for like other races that you can get into. And I had a friend of mine get into a race that way, and I wish I would have had that option when I was doing it. But these races are becoming more and more popular. They're becoming more and more exciting to run. I mean,
Mhm.
I would love to do them again. It's, just kind of fun to think about that. But I think if you really want to go after this goal, and it's a great goal to have, you just have to get creative and really look at, okay, what do I want to do and how do I want to go about this? Just make a plan and just remember why you're doing this and why you're going forward. And then I think if you really want it, you'll figure out a way.
Yeah, and I just kind of want to add some things to the charitable route because I've ran several races for charity, and you mentioned it as well, where, so I'm going to say this first, planning is so important if you're going to do the charitable route because you want to make sure that you are, especially now that so many people are wanting to run these races, that you are reaching out to charities before the lotteries even open
Mhm.
and close because just the level of competition after a lottery closes and people don't get in, there's going to be scrambling for those. So if you are someone who is really, really interested in running one of these races, definitely look into charities, but do that sooner rather than later. The other thing I wanted to add, because you mentioned it and I experienced it when I ran London, is that there is almost like an interviewing process with some of these
Yes.
charities. Like they want to talk to you and they want to know what are your ideas for fundraising and why
Mhm.
is our charity the one that you want and why should we pick you? So I think that's something that with London, it surprised me because I've been running for quite a long time for me. And When I first started fundraising for charities, it was just you would go to the website, pay the amount to be a part of the team, and then you were a part of the team. Now it's like, no, you actually have to apply and you have to do an
Mhm.
interview and they want to talk to you. So there's preparation with that. So I feel like that builds upon what you're saying in terms of being creative with how to fundraise. It's also knowing that chances are these charitable organizations are going to want to talk to you to find out what are your creative ideas for fundraising. So that's
And
like
and
the
it,
one thing I wanted to add there.
and I will also add even further, once you have been accepted by a charity organization, you need to create a plan because oftentimes in these races, you don't have a ton of time to raise money. So, as an example, I talk about this in my book that I had, a certain amount of money I had to raise for Boston. I set milestones and goals on how much money I wanted to raise by a certain time. And to me, setting up a plan and executing on that plan just kept me on track because if you don't raise that money, you either have to pay it or you're out. So you want to make sure that you have a plan in place of how you're going to do this month by month by month. And as someone, I came from a sales background and I had to meet quotas every year, and this is how we do this. You plan it out so that you're not trying to eat a whole elephant in one sitting, you're eating it one bite at a time, right? So not only, it's a great idea to get in front of these charities before the lotteries close, having the plan for the interview process, which basically that's what that is, and then having your milestones in plan after you get accepted to the team, because you don't want to end up with a $5,000 bill at the end of that charity cycle. So, and these charities now, it used to be, you could just pay the money for the charity and that was it. But they don't really like that anymore. They want you to actually raise money. So if you've got $5,000, $10,000 laying around, that's really awesome and good for you. But so many of those charities now want to see you out there fundraising. They want to see you out there raising funds and not just taking it out of your bank account and plunking it down. So be wary of that if you have, a lot of money to lay down and you just want to do it. That they don't really like that anymore. They kind of poo-poo that idea. So I think they want to get the word out. They want it to be genuine and they want people to actually go out and raise the funds and bring awareness to their organization.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So going to your book, there was one
Mhm.
of the things that I loved about it, which I felt like you weaved throughout, was this idea of running as a practice. Can you speak to us more about that? Of it just because I feel like us runners, we can be so goal oriented and just like,
Mhm.
I need to do this for this. But the way you talked about it in terms of how you had to reevaluate your relationship to drinking, to eating, to hydrating, to all of that. So, can you talk to us about this idea of running as a practice and not just running as a thing you do to meet the goal?
Yeah, I think for someone like me, and there may be others out there too, I'm just not a natural athlete. I have to work really hard at being an athletic person. So I'm not a magical creature that can just, drink a bottle of wine and then go run the next day. These things don't work for me. And so I struggle with, that social side of me that wants to have fun and socialize with my friends and do all those fun things. And then also getting up at 6 a.m. And going for a 5 mile hill run or whatever. So I think when you're in the running process that you have to realize that you are an athlete and you need to treat your body that way. And that means doing all the extras, going to physical therapy when you need to, getting dry needling done, or going to acupuncture, or just getting more sleep, or eating well, for a week before a race or something. So these are all part of being a runner that has nothing to do really with how fast you run or what pace you are or what age group you're in. So these are all just a part of the practice of becoming a runner. And I think for me, I suffer from FOMO. I'm a very social person. I like to go out and have fun. And I struggled a lot with this in the beginning of how do I still get to do this fun thing I love to do, but also do all these other things I like to do too. And I realized that I had to really kind of give some of my things up that I really enjoy, like margaritas all the time and drinking wine, and diet or whatever. And some of that is menopause and going through the aging process, but I kind of came around to realizing that running to me was more important than doing some of those other things. And if I wanted to really truly do this and be a runner, that I had to start acting like an athlete and really think about what I was putting in my mouth, what am I drinking, what am I eating, how am I sleeping, how am I recovering, what kind of strength training am I doing? And these are all just a part of the process. So I'm sure that other people can relate. You've got things going on in your life, you got kids, you've got things happening, and you want to keep doing the thing you love to do, but sometimes life gets in the way. And I think also as I wove through the book that I started to become more kind to myself and started to realize that this is okay if you're not, breaking land speed records over here. You're just, you're running. And so be proud of that. Be happy that you are still moving and upright. So,
Yeah. So, how has because in the beginning of the book, you talk about like being a real runner and getting the medal and getting faster and all of that. Now that you're at this end or this part of your journey, how would you define being a real runner now?
well, now I think if you run, you're a real runner. I think at that time, I struggled a little bit with the label because I was running on a treadmill. I wasn't really running it outside very much. And the first time I went to a group run, there was all these people there that looked to me like the real runner. Like they were wearing the right clothes, the right watches, they were talking the right lingo. And I felt like I wasn't a part of that world. But now I realize that if you're running, you're a runner. It doesn't really matter. But I struggled with that label at first because I just didn't feel like I understood all the nuances of all the vocabulary and all the tools that you need to become a runner. And I mean, we do have a lot of our own language and lingo. And so you go to a group run and you may never have run before, and people are talking about, tempo runs or doing fartleks or at the track doing 800s or whatever. And you're kind of like, I don't know what any of that is. So I think letting go of that label a little bit and just realizing it doesn't really matter what my pace is, what my finish time is, or any of that anymore. It's just the fact that I'm out there still running and still doing all the things and enjoying the races is really what being a runner is all about. It doesn't have anything to do with how fast you are or what your last marathon time was.
Yeah, and to kind of go off of that, there was, because I think it happens to a lot of us, right? When we become overly focused on times, which is something that happened to you, where it was that 5 hour mark was such a
Oh yeah.
deal for you. And I love it because you talk about surrendering, that the moment you surrendered, that time no longer had a hold on you, and then you ran your best times. So, can
hmm
you talk to us about that? Because, again, a lot of us go through that where we're so focused on time and we're not progressing if we're not getting faster and if we're not doing this better. And, listen, I've had those spirals as well. And I know plenty of people have had those spirals where seeing a certain number on the clock, instead of feeling proud that you were strong enough to complete the distance, you get caught up with the time that it took you
hmm
to complete that distance. So, can you walk us through what was that experience like for you, and how how were you able to let go?
Yeah, I think a lot of us think of our marathon time or our half marathon time or our 5K time as proof of how hard we worked. And it's not. You can work so hard and you can have the best training cycle of your life. And it may not reflect on race day. You might have the most perfect conditions ever on race day, and it still not come out and reflect that. I think for me, writing this book and really getting real about what was going on in my head during those races where I, went over the 5 hour mark and it really bruised my ego. I hope that it will inspire other people to realize that it's just a number. It doesn't prove how hard you worked. It doesn't prove your abilities as an athlete. All it is just a number on a day that maybe wasn't your best day, or maybe it was a great day and you just, for whatever reason, the time just doesn't show that. And I think being able to let go of that, that pressure, that feeling of having to do something, it's just freeing, right? And so once you're able to let go of that and realize it's not really that important to anybody but me, then it's almost like the pressure is off, the stress is gone, and I can just be free of that. And then you perform so much better. I mean, I talk about surrendering gives you that freedom, right? And so you're holding on so tightly to something and what you want to happen, and it doesn't happen because you're just so focused on not doing something that you inadvertently manifest the thing you don't want to happen. So focusing differently and just kind of letting go. And, as much as the pandemic was such a bummer at the time, I think in a way it kind of helped me to just like distance myself a little bit and be like, all right, just calm down with the times and stuff and let it go and realize that it's just not that important. That you're still doing epic things. There's still a very small percentage of people that are doing this in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And this is not like something that everyone is doing everywhere. You're really an anomaly, even though you may not feel that way, because everyone in your envelope is a runner or an athlete or somebody doing something epic. So I think just taking a step back and realizing that really the only person that cares about your time is you. So just let it go a little bit and just be happy that you're a runner and you're able to enjoy it. So.
Yeah, there are two quotes that speak to this, right? So the first one is, as runners, our victories are based on pace and finishing times, which determine how fit we are or how good of a runner we are. In reality, it doesn't measure how hard we worked or how dedicated we were to running. So that's the first one. The second one is, surrendering to the process opened my eyes to a different kind of power, one rooted in patience, consistency, and acceptance. Funny how surrendering to something you're holding onto so tightly actually gives you freedom. And it was like that where I was like, oh, snap. It's a journey. Like
Mhm.
it really is a journey. And I always tell people that who you are at the beginning of a training cycle is not who you will be at the end. Like that's how
Mhm.
transformative this is. And it's not just running, it's not just physically moving your body. And that's something that you talked about throughout the book, where it's not just doing the workouts, it's the mental side of it. And I wanted to ask you about that because it came up a few times, this idea of being someone who deserves care, who
Mhm.
deserves the physical therapy for plantar fasciitis, who deserves the mental health therapy because life is heavy. How do now that I guess it's for me, it's everything is like, so now that you're here and you've lived through that all, how do we approach self-care and how do we approach looking after ourselves in a way that doesn't feel selfish? Because I think that's where a lot of people get caught up of like, oh no, I can't get the massage because that's like that's selfish, or I need to focus on the running. I can't do this rehab stuff because I need to do the workout. And yet it's all connected. Let's see. Robyn, are you there? Oh,
Oh, I lost
there
you for a
you are.
second.
Okay. I'm like, I
Yeah,
don't
there
know
you
if
are.
it was it me? Did I
I don't
freeze?
know. You,
Chances are pretty good that I froze. Can you see me now?
yes, yes. So we're talking about how deserving all the things. And I think, I worked with a coach one time who told me to go get physical therapy, because I started struggling with my knee and to go do all those extras that I needed. And I always thought I didn't deserve them because I wasn't fast, I wasn't winning, I wasn't an elite athlete. I'm just somebody running, just 4 and 5 hour marathons. Like I don't deserve that. And I think that label of athlete kind of came up then. And it was like, yes, you do, because you're an athlete and you need to take care of your body and you're running very long distances. And yes, you do deserve this. And it was kind of a turning point for me because I didn't realize I was an athlete based on my performance. I realized as I was an athlete based on what I was doing and training and what I was committed to doing as a runner. That's when I realized that, okay, I need to take care of myself, that it's not wrong to go to physical therapy, or I go to the chiropractor every week to get adjusted. And, these are all things that help me continue to do what I want to do. And I kind of shifted then. And one of my mantras in my head that I say all the time to myself now is that I want to be my own best friend. What would I tell my best friend if she said, your knee, my knee is really hurting and it hurts at night and I wish I could do something about it. I would say, well, maybe you need to go see a physical therapist. And so I think about that a lot. And I think as I've gotten older, I've realized that it's not selfish and that it does make sense for me to look at myself and think, how can I be my own best friend? Nobody else is going to do it for me. I've got to do it for myself. And my husband has been sick for many years, and it's hard when you are with someone who's had a lot of issues and a lot of health problems to put yourself first. But I had to in order to be strong enough to take care of him. So it doesn't feel selfish to me at all. Um, and I don't think of it as a luxury anymore. I think of it as a necessity. And if I want to keep doing the things I'm doing and stay healthy for him and be able to be strong for him and myself, then these are the things you have to do. And the same if you're raising your children, if you're helping with your parents, any of those things, you're not doing yourself any favors by not taking care of yourself first.
Yeah, I mean, we can't go after these big goals without taking a moment to reflect on like what do I actually need to achieve those
Hmm.
goals, right? It's a lot. And I was going to ask you if that was something that played into your feeling of deserving care because you were a caretaker and there was so
Hmm.
much of your life that changed, right? With your husband's cancer diagnosis and even which is why I ask about, what's a real runner now, because all these identities, they do play a big role as to how we show up, right? And you talk about how there was almost like a mourning of what you thought your relationship would be like to, oh, cancer has totally shifted things and
Hmm.
changed that. So you talk about, and I love it because you said that running became your battle cry. And I
Hmm.
absolutely love that. And after I read everything, I'm like, no wonder running is, and I don't know if it's the same for you, but for me, it's always running is so hard, but it feels like something I can control. And when life
Yes.
feels really chaotic and uncontrollable, it's like, oh, I cling even more to running. So if running for you is that space where you can be in control, how did you manage your husband's cancer diagnosis, your own injuries between the plantar fasciitis and your knees, and all of this, where running was this thing where you were able to show up and be in control? You had your community to having those moments where it was like, oh, I can't run anymore. Or I am, yes, these people are still my friends, but I'm no longer a part of that long run community.
Yeah, it definitely there was a lot of struggles in there and there was some dark days, when I was dealing with plantars, and that's such an awful injury to have. And I would recommend if anybody feels it coming on to stop running immediately. Don't just keep running. That was a huge mistake. But I think anytime you're dealing with injuries and you're also going through a lot of stress in your life and maybe you can't run, it's so hard. It was really hard. And I just tried to maybe still show up for the, post coffee after the run or something like that, just to kind of stay in the group. But it is such a part of my mental, just therapy, really, of just being able to go out for a run. And there may be a whole lot going on in my life, but I can go for a run and somebody else can be talking about something, and I can just kind of escape for an hour into somebody else's life. or
Yeah.
if we're doing a hard workout and I can just kind of take all my frustrations out in a hard workout and feel better afterward because it's you never feel worse, right? And so just using that as a way to kind of release stress and pressure and of all the things going on, it is something I can control. And I can decide how I want that run to be that day and what I need out of it. So, yes, I think whether it's running or swimming or biking, whatever gets someone to a place, if you're a caregiver, you've got to have that outlet. You've got to be able to have that escape for yourself, even if it's just, a half an hour a day to be able to kind of escape and get the stress out and do something for you. And I wasn't always able to do that every day, but I tried to get out as much as possible. And I never stopped setting goals for myself, even though we were in the throes of a lot of really crazy, chaotic times, especially during, the time my husband had to have his jaw completely reconstructed, and I'm deciding I'm going to run Boston and raise tons of money. I think still having a goal for yourself is so important because otherwise it's kind of like what am I here for? What am I doing other than just taking care of this person? Having your own goal is still important and you should still go after them. It's not selfish to do that, and you may feel like you don't have time, and you may not, but you'd be surprised at how much time you can find if you put your mind to it.
Yeah, I think that was something that amazed me because I would read about how your husband's surgeries or how he had complications. And I was like, oh, this is the moment where she's going to say that she didn't run the race. And yet you did. And that was something that was, it's again, for it's so, it's to me, it was such an interesting, as the person reading it, where I was like, oh my God, she's still going to run the race. And it's that reminder of like, yes, you are just like, that's the greater theme of you are deserving of care, right? Like,
Hmm.
even if the care means that you're running 26.2 miles for quote unquote fun, right? But that was
Yes.
something that I kept reading anytime you talked about complications and how there were setbacks, or how this race, instead of it being something that you and your husband traveled to together, it was you going with a friend, or again, like an entire, it just seems like how you had mapped out or dreamt about completing these races changed
Yeah.
completely with that
Yeah.
cancer diagnosis. And you still went through with it. And every race, you said that was one of the things that powered you, knowing that people were tracking you. Like, he may not
Hmm.
be there, but you knew that he was tracking your splits and keeping up. And even just at the end, when you finished Tokyo, or it was in the last chapter, where you're like, he doesn't understand it. He doesn't understand why I do these things, but he supports me. And that
Hmm.
to me is so, it's so huge. And I find that, at least when I think of myself and I think of like the athletes that I work with, in terms of like considering who's part of your support network, I'm always like, make sure your support network includes people who aren't runners, right? Because
Hmm.
those are those people that are going to keep you grounded. Because when you are
Yes.
surrounded by runners, you're thinking, oh, I have to think about the next goal, the next race, the next time, the next any of that. When it's like, I mean, I see it all the time. Like, I experience it in my household where it's like I'm the only runner. I mean, my daughter's getting into running, but no one understands why I do any of it. And yet they're all like, well, if that makes you happy, great. And, if I come home and complain about anything, it's like, yeah, well, remember you chose to do that. Like, no one's
Yeah.
telling you to go do those runs. And I'm like, you're right. Because if I was with my runner friends, we'd all be like, man, that sucked. This was awful. Like, misery would love company. Whereas the people
Hmm.
who are outside of running, those are my reality checks of, okay, yeah, it was miserable, but again, you chose to do this. No one else is
Hmm.
telling you to go do these things. So I'm curious to kind of go back. Did you ever experience guilt over continuing on with this journey, even with everything going on with your husband?
There was so much guilt. It was an enormous amount of guilt. I had so much guilt about so many things, and guilt is such a wasted emotion, right? It really
Mm-hmm.
is. And I think when I've been working on my audiobooks, I've been reading chapter after chapter, some of them multiple times, and I talk a lot about guilt in the book, and I feel like at the time, I felt what I felt, whether it was right or wrong. But feeling guilty doesn't really accomplish much of anything. It's an emotion that is so wasteful and just takes away your energy. So yes, I did have a ton of guilt. I worked through a lot of it. I had guilt about, I'm not sick and he is. I'm healthy and he's not. Why does he have to go through this and I don't? And, why I feel guilty because I'm mad that, our lives are turned upside down. I feel guilty because, I want to be able to go out to dinner with my husband and I can't do that anymore. Just all kinds of stuff that I thought I should be happy. He's still here. He's still alive. I shouldn't feel mad about these things. And I think it's just all just such a waste. But yeah, I did. And but I also was so good to get away and to escape for a little bit, just to have, a weekend to be able to escape what was going on in the household and enjoy life and remember what it's like to run a marathon, be a runner, be around a bunch of, crazy people who are doing, 26.2 miles, feel that energy that you feel at the beginning of a marathon. There's nothing quite like it. Having that escape was just so what I needed at the time. And, I can be pretty stubborn and I kept moving forward because I really wanted to do these things. I really was just basically, when I want something, I will just stop at nothing to get to where I want it. But, and I also, realized that I needed it too. And,
Mhm.
if he would have been in a different health situation at the time of these races, it would have been different. But he was able to manage on his own. My parents live across the street from us, so they were always able to come help. But he was in a place that he was okay and he wasn't, in the hospital or, in a bad way or anything. So that would have been different. I think, in a way, I kind of got lucky with some of that because he was healthy enough to be on his own, maybe not to travel with me, but he was able to handle everything on his own at home. But it's not to say I didn't have a few meltdowns, along the way. So I did have quite a few of those, and it was really hard. There was times when I really, really struggled and had to figure out how I was going to get through this. But I think, we are all more resilient than we think we are.
Mhm.
And just being able to recognize when you need help and when you need to reach out is really important. I think a lot of people, and it's hard. I mean, it was the hardest thing I ever did to reach out and get help. It's really, really difficult. But once you do, then you're like, why didn't I do this sooner? And hopefully now, with newer generations of people coming up, they're more used to working with therapists and with mental health, professionals than maybe our generation is. So as it becomes more and more acceptable to do those things, and really, just people do it all the time now, my
Mhm.
generation just wasn't really like that. So I'm hoping that some of the younger people coming up, they don't have those reservations about getting help and getting what they need, instead of just suffering in silence.
Yeah, listen, it's hard. It's hard to kind of using the word, right? It's hard to surrender to
Hmm.
needing help and to asking people for help and to acknowledging, just even acknowledging that you need help in a way that requires someone else to come in to give you that help. Like that's really, really hard. And I think I find that it's just in our society and in our culture, I think it's really hard to say,
Hmm.
I need help and these are the reasons why, and to show that vulnerability and to be like, this is a lot and I can't take it even if on the outside it looks like I'm handling it well, it's really
Hmm.
secretly on the inside I'm breaking and I'm falling apart. So that was something that again, like it to me, it tied into this whole idea of like that being deserving of care and
Hmm.
how like I just saw it like with each progressive race that you did, it's like you had more people around you supporting you and like going to these races with you or staying at races. And that was something that for me it made me so happy because there's so much goodness in the running community. and so much support to be found there that I recalled something you shared earlier on in the book about how the long run is such a magical time because you can be with complete strangers and yet you finish that run knowing that the person's entire life story and
Yeah.
knowing the depths of their thoughts. And I mean, to just like every runner, right, we all know like the bathroom needs of our fellow
Yeah.
training partner, because you talk about those things, right?
Yes.
So there's so much beauty in the running community that that is a space too where we can ask for help and we can ask for support. And it seems like you have such an incredible community where you're at. Like, even when you were talking, I think you said with Tokyo, there were like 8 of you that were traveling from your town alone to do that race. It's just so, the running community is just so awesome. And that's just it. That's what I want to say.
It
Um,
is. It is amazing. And I think, I said early on in the book when I first joined the run club here that all your best friends are there. And they
mhm.
really are. I mean, and I told somebody that the other day. We were at a run and they were new to town or something. And I'm like, all your best friends are at run club. So it doesn't matter which run club you join. There's a ton of them here where we live, and we're really lucky. It's a very active running community where I live. But no matter what run club you belong to, your best friends are there. So just go find those people and go to your run club. And you don't have to be fast. I wasn't fast. The first run club I went to, I had on used shoes. I wore shoes that I bought at Goodwill that were already used up. And I went out there and I didn't realize we were going to be running up and down hills. And so we ran hills that night. And I didn't know that people did that. But I wasn't fast. I probably was last. But I just started making friends and kept going. And it just, people were like, "You're coming next time, right?" And yeah, I'll come again. And so just find those people. I talk about my best running friends that I have now, and just having that kind of group to keep you accountable, but also that you kind of walk through life with. We talk about our jobs a lot and what's going on in our careers, and when football season comes around, we talk a lot about football and our teams, and it's just all of that is makes the miles go by quicker, but it also is just a fun conversations, and we laugh, and sometimes we cry, and we keep each other accountable, and it's just it's best friends. That's what you are, and you deserve to have that too. You deserve to have that community, and running is such a metaphor for life. It's just incredible how that works that way. And it was funny. I was listening to another running podcast the other day, and they were saying that we should be assigned a therapist like at birth so that we don't have to like go seek one out when we're having a problem, that we should just have one from like birth. And I think that was such a great suggestion to just have that therapist there. But if you can't afford a therapist, or you're struggling to ask for help, going to your running buddies is another way to kind of work out some of your problems and your issues. Because I think when you're running side by side like that and you got somebody trapped with you for, 5 to 10 miles, you can get a lot of stuff out.
Mhm. I agree. So you just said what I was about to ask, which
Okay.
in your opinion, again, looking back of the stories that you shared in this book of your experience getting your 6 star, what would you say are some of those parallels between running and like life off the run?
Yeah, I think, setting goals for things you want to do in your life, for me, that is really important to think about. These are the things I want to achieve. These are the things that I want to go after, and the places I want to see and experience. And just having the ability to do something that you want to do. It's not about meeting goals for your company or for your boss or for anything else, at work. It's about what you want to do with your life. And having that for yourself is really important. I think if you are not maybe in a position where you have that thing that you do, and all you do is go to work every day and come home and watch Netflix and go to bed, that you're really missing out on some of the richness of life, right?
Hmm.
And the deep conversations you can be having, and just kind of working out maybe some of the problems that you have. And I don't know, just seeking out that those friendships that are so meaningful, that go beyond just, running together. So it is just, there's just so much about running that parallels life. It's just incredible. But I can't imagine not having it in my life, and not, I wish I would have started sooner. Um, but just knowing that you always have the ability to lace up your shoes, go outside, pound your feet on the pavement for a while, and that it's for you and no one else, and set your own goals for your own life is just so important.
Yeah, I know for me, running has been that space of if I can do this hard thing, like
Hmm.
run a marathon or whatever it is, then I know I can handle what life throws my way as long as I
Yeah,
focus on just the next step ahead, the next breath. Like,
yeah.
let's not, and you said it in the book, right? Like, be in the mile that you're in. And
Hmm.
that to me is that's one of the biggest parallels of life of let's not focus on mile 26 when we're at mile
Right.
5. Let's focus on mile 5. And it's the same with life of let's not worry about what could potentially happen in 6 months. Let's worry about, what's
Yeah.
happening today, what's happening tomorrow. Those are the things we can worry about because those are more real. Anything can happen to change it,
Hmm.
right? You've experienced that. And if you've ran for any amount of time, you've experienced that where you start off, it may feel rough. And if you were to trust that rough feeling in the beginning, you may never get to the end of your run, or you may never get to that
Sure.
point where it does feel good. It'll still be hard, right? Because running inherently is a very challenging sport. But that to me is always that's always my parallel of like, all right, if I can run, if I can wake up early and I can get this done, then I can do anything the day throws at me as long as I'm focusing on just what's the foot in front of me, what's that step in front of me.
Yeah, I think
Um,
it is important to not get ahead of yourself. I talk about that in Berlin. I just got totally in my head and completely just blew up in that race. And having that thought of, okay, things aren't working right now. What can I change to make things better? Instead of just slogging along with, okay, well, this is just the way life's going to be, and there's nothing I can do about it. Yes, you can. You can change direction. You can do something different. You
mhm.
can go a different direction if you're willing to do that. And you talk about doing hard things. It's interesting, life now, we're sitting in, perfectly conditioned air, and we are, protected from the elements, and we don't have to get super hot and sweaty if we don't want to. We don't have to be freezing cold. And getting outside and being in the heat, being in the cold, having these extreme kind of situations and environments, it makes you tougher, so that when you do have a situation that you have to go through, like a hurricane, like cancer, like anything else, you are stronger and more resilient than if you had never really faced anything tough in your life. I think that's my opinion. It's not to say that you can't get through it, but I think being able to overcome hard things makes you stronger when you do have to go after things that are really, really tough. And you start to feel like your life might be spiraling, when things are going crazy. It's like, no, we can get a hold of this. We can handle this. We can do hard things. We've been in harder situations than this.
Hmm.
And it just kind of prepares you, like if your air conditioning goes out, well, I run in 90-degree temperatures. I can sit here in my house without air conditioning for a couple of hours until it gets fixed. It's not like, oh my God, the world's going to end. I can't sit here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So just being prepared for the times when life may not be so great. I think that's another parallel with running is you can do really, really tough things to your body and still manage, other things that may happen in your life.
Yeah. I mean, it's 90 degrees. As I was reading your book, I felt very seen because you were like, I don't do well with the heat. And I'm like, me neither. And I do it year after year after year.
Same.
I don't know what's wrong with me, but I subject
It's
myself to that. That leads me to one of the final questions that I had for you was the idea of running as an adventure. Because I
mm,
feel like at the end, I felt like what I read were your running adventures. Like that's kind of what it felt like. And you definitely threw the word, I love adventure. So I may be someone who is just like extra sensitive to the use of that word. But you threw it in. It was just sprinkled throughout the book where you're like, this was a sucky race, but what an adventure I had. Like that was kind of the feeling for some of these things. And that is, again, that adventure is like, that is such a high value word for me. And I just loved it because it helped. Speaking of changing direction, right?
mm,
Sometimes it's just perspective. The direction that you need to change is how you're looking at something. So every time you said adventure, I was like, oh, here's a moment where this experience, it clicked in a different way for you, where you
mhm.
were able to see the fun in it, the joy in it, the here I am doing something different and hard because I can do it. So talk to us more about that, running as an adventure.
Well, I think I'm an adventure junkie, probably. I love just, exploring new things and traveling, seeing new things, experiencing new things, and all of, life is really just a big adventure. And even if I'm not getting on a plane and going somewhere, I mean, I can be driving an hour down the road and running somewhere different, and it feels like an adventure, right? And so just being outside, we just did a trail run this past May. And so we were doing a lot of training on trails. And I don't know, it just feels like being a kid again, being out in the woods, running around. I mean, as adults, this is not something a lot of adults do, right?
Mhm.
Very few people get out and go run in the woods for fun. And my husband just can't believe we actually run in the woods. But it's so fun. It's like being a kid. And I think for me, adventure just kind of brings out just my youthful, just brings out youthful feelings of being a kid again, exploring, seeing new things, learning new things about myself. And even though the races may not go the way I wanted them to, or maybe sometimes they did, it was still all fun and interesting, and I learned. And I mean, I think the biggest lesson is I learned so much during the course of all the marathons, and I used those lessons to get better the next time. And running will teach you so much if you're willing to learn. You got to pay attention. You can't just keep doing the same things over and over again. But it's all just part of it, right? It's all part of learning and understanding and seeing new things, new people. And I think that's why the World Majors really appealed to me, is that it's a global community. You're running in these amazing cities around the world, seeing them on foot, which is just unique than seeing them in a bus or in a car. And I just love that part of it. You get to see something that you may not be able to see if you were on a train or something. So, um, but yeah, even just running outside of a hotel room when I was traveling for work was I was like, okay, I just saw all these things before, 7 a.m. and I would leave the hotel with my engineer and I'd be like, yeah, there's this, park down here, right down the road. And over here, there's this. And he was like, how do you know this? I'm like, oh, I went and ran this morning and I saw all these things. So it's kind of fun to see a city that way and explore it when you're traveling, even for work. So I just love that.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm
It,
nosy.
no, I mean, I think it's the same. And you said it somewhere in the book where seeing the world on your feet is
Yes.
very different than driving through it. So I'm the
Yeah.
same way. I love to run in new places wherever we travel, obviously safe places. But there is something there is something to be said about what your body experiences when you're working your way through the distance versus when you're passively sitting in a car through the distance.
Yeah.
If you just notice more. So yeah, listen, I love adventures and I think everyone should go on more adventures. I think maybe the world would be a happier place if people challenge
Agreed.
themselves to go on more adventures and to see more of the world on their feet versus behind
Hmm.
a screen or whatever it is. So, all right, I have four questions for you.
Okay.
The first question is, did this book feel like another marathon for you in terms of the process of writing it and getting it published and all of that?
Yeah, yes, very much so. Maybe like an ultra marathon. The writing part was not that hard for me. I had, a lot of logs, a lot of notes. I'm definitely a journaler. I didn't really realize how much of a journaler I was until I opened the closet and saw, 10 years worth of running journals stacked up. And so yeah, I think the writing part came easy for me. There was a natural arc there. Yeah, kind of not a runner.
Oh, wait, hold on. Hold on,
So there was
everyone. Hold on, Robyn. Can you see me? Let's give it a minute,
there we
y'all.
go. There you
Can you
go.
see me now? Okay, yes.
Yes.
Let's go back. The last I heard was that there was kind of a natural arc to the story,
Yes.
not being a runner to being a runner.
Yeah, yeah. So that it felt the writing felt pretty easy. The publishing part, a lot harder. Getting the editing done, just constantly editing and going through it, feeling like I was never going to be done with editing. That was tough. And I still feel like I could edit some more. So, and the audiobook version has been really hard. That's like another marathon. Reading it over and over and over again and trying to get it all just perfect for an audiobook has been quite the project. So, yeah, it was like probably a 100-mile ultra is what it felt like.
Yeah,
It
that's
was,
what, yeah.
but I also loved it. I loved the writing process and um, the words flowed out of me. It was not hard to write. It was just all the rest of it that's hard. I would love to write another book, but I'm like, oh, I don't know if I'm ready to do that again. So,
It's just like the marathon majors. You need to give
Mhm.
yourself that time where you step away. And then I think it's the itch is going to come, that
Yeah.
desire, that new goal is going to come, and you're going to be like, yeah, let's do this. I think sometimes I mean, you even talked about it right throughout the book where it's like you needed those 2 weeks after each marathon to
Hmm.
kind of like not only to rest, but there's almost that mental break that you need to,
Yeah.
to want to do it again. You need that
Hmm.
break because it's so intense. And we're also talking about, which we didn't even get into, right? These are massive races with lots of logistics, lots of people. They are very stimulating events, right? Like there's a lot.
Yes.
You're running with tens of thousands of people. So there's a whole come down from that experience as well
Mhm.
of like, oh my God, I just ran this race with 50,000 other people on streets where, some of your marathon record holders are, or
Mhm.
some of the greatest runners of all times. Like there is a moment of processing that of like, okay, wait, I just need to kind of like just calm down from that experience. So I'm sure it'll be the same for the book where it's like, kind of like come down from the experience of having this book out in the world, from having your words, your feelings, your thoughts, all of it out into the world before you can focus on that next goal, that
Yeah.
next marathon.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell us, where can we connect with you? Where can we pick up the book? There it is. Yeah, how do we connect with you? How do we support you?
Well, I would be awesome. The book is available on Amazon in ebook and in paperback, and soon it will be available in audio form, which it'll be on all the audio platforms like Spotify and Audible and all those. So that's coming soon. But paperback and ebook is available now. It's also available on Barnes and Noble And if you don't like the big box stores, you can go to bookshop.org and support your indie bookstore. Even if you order it on there, it does support other indie bookstores, not just, or you can order it on there and have it delivered into your own bookstore locally. So lots of good ways to get it. And really, that's the best way to support it. Write a review for Amazon. It really helps to get the word out. Take a selfie with you and tag me on social media so I can see you with the book and I'll share it. I'm on Instagram at beachy_runner. I'm also on Facebook under my own name and LinkedIn as well. And I'm working on getting a speaking career going around the book and kind of what I talk about, and it's my 30-second shift. So working on that and just kind of spread the word to get more people inspired to, whether it's running or anything, to start doing the things they want to do with their life and get going. So that's what I hope to do, is inspire others to go after their hopes and dreams.
I love that. So now that, you've completed it, you mentioned it in there. They dropped this seventh star,
Yes.
Sydney. And you also talk about how you've dipped your toes into 50Ks. How do you see the future of running for yourself looking like?
Yeah, I don't have any specific goals right now. I do a lot of pacing in my local races here. We have quite a few half marathons here in the fall, and I love doing that. I pace usually all the local races here, and I do some other pacing with beast pacing around the country. But I don't really have any specific running goals right now. Will I do another marathon? I would love to. I love the marathon distance. Would I do another 50K? Maybe. We have a 50K here locally in January that's pretty flat, not very technical, that is really fun. I've done the relay for the last 7 or 8 years. It's a possibility. These are all, I mean, I definitely want to shoot for races that I don't have to train in the summer. So I wouldn't mind doing that. Yes, I'd like to do Sydney just because, not only because it's a seventh major, but just the race is amazing. The finish line right in front of the Opera House on the bridge there is incredible, an incredible location, another giant adventure. So yeah, of course it's on my radar. There's some folks here locally that are doing it that, I know is going to give me the itch to want to do it too. So yeah, nothing is really out of the realm of possibility. But after Tokyo and the 50K, I just wanted to take some time to kind of, just run for fun and enjoy it and not feel like I had any specific goal I had to meet. And I'm also coaching, so I'm working with other athletes now, which is really fun too.
Yeah, I mean, and sometimes that's the definition of an adventure, right? Is like not really knowing, but you're just gonna go and see what happens. So
Hmm.
I'm excited to see where running takes you, and even just more excited that you're exploring other facets of running, either through pacing or through run coaching, because it really does, it enriches the experience of running. Like it just
Hmm.
adds another layer of just awe when it comes to this incredible sport. All right, final question
Okay.
is, what are your final words for us?
Oh, wow. I guess I would say that don't ever feel like you're too old or to anything really to go after your dreams, your goals. You are always in a position where you can go after those if you break them down into small, simple steps and just be consistent and you will get there. You may not always meet your goal time, but you can still finish if you set your mind to it and just don't feel like that you can't do anything. Always feel like this is doable, this is possible. I just have to break it down into small, simple steps. And I'm not too old, even though I might be going through menopause or I might be having, an issue at my home life, my parents and my kids and my husband or whatever. Realize that you are important too, and that you should take what you want to do in your life and put it up there at the top and say, these are the things I want to go after. This is what I want to do. And this is how I'm going to work it around my responsibilities in my life so that I can still achieve my goal and also still be that, mom and wife and daughter or whatever I need to be for my family.
I love that. Robyn, thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
joining me and for talking to us about your book and just life in general, because I know that there is more to you and to your story than what's contained in these pages. So thank you for sharing what you have.
Well, thank you
And
for reading it. I love all the post-it note bookmarks in there.
yes, listen, I have notes in there. I've got like a whole,
Oh
you
my
know,
goodness.
my notes here. So listen, my brain operates on the handwritten notes, the written notes, like all of it. So I took lots of notes. So Robyn, thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for joining. And yeah, everyone, we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye. Thanks.